Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to speak about why your government is actually broke. Why is your government claiming that it cannot have enough money to pay teachers, have enough money to pay the local governments, not have enough money to be able to meet its recurrent expenditure? So why is your government going broke? The first thing is over expenditure. Yes, most governments, especially in Africa, overspend. Yes, they overspend. They have the budgeting technique that is not based on zero-based budgeting. That is where you start from scratch and justify every single item, every single budget line on the budget. They start by having the previous year's budget and then they mark up. So why are you marking up on the previous budget? You may not be able to take care of or actually adjust for real issues that are current in this year. You may not be able to reduce any redundancies from the previous budget, and you just move on by changing and adding the previous budget to the current budget, and the basis for your budget may actually be wrong, ending up in overspending. Sometimes this over expenditure may be because of structural issues. So you spend on things just because even your own budgeting technique was at fault. So over expenditure, so you allocate unwisely, then you spend unwisely. How many governments end up purchasing new vehicles every single year? And when you ask why are they buying new vehicles every single year, the reason could be that if we do not spend this money, we will return the money. Not because you are spending based on these cars we actually need for this and this purpose. So they spend for the sake of spending, and they spend so that next year they can be able to ask for a greater allocation. Remember, a percentage above the previous budget. So there is no basis for spending all this money, but they spend this money regardless. And that's even the government departments look at each other and say, so and so is spending this much money, amount of money. Why don't we spend this much amount of money? Some of them spend the last months towards the end of the year, and they overspend quickly. They take foreign trips, unnecessary trips. They end up spending too much money, not because they need to spend enough money, but because they need to justify for an additional allocation in the coming year. So over expenditure based on poor budgeting and poor way of doing things. If you are to take the same approach with your own personal spending, that I need to spend because last year I did not spend as much, then you would go into financial bankruptcy, because you will end up buying and paying for things that you may not actually need and end up overspending your money. So that is one of the reasons. The other one is poor collection of taxes. It has been estimated that most governments cannot be able to correctly or effectively collect as much tax as they could otherwise do. Some of them are either, because of legislation, unable to pursue all tax collections, or they are incapacitated. So the people who collect or enforce tax policy are fewer in number. Some are not even be able to upgrade to be digitized, to be enough to be able to handle many transactions, and many people are able to evade or avoid these taxes. So collection of these taxes is actually much lower, and some countries go to the point of collecting only 40% of their potential tax collections. So that is a structural problem that must be addressed by any government if it is to be better off financially. Of course, the other thing that we cannot forget to speak about is corruption and mismanagement. There was a time I looked at a government document. This government document was talking about drilling water wells in a dry location. And these water wells, these boreholes, were being dug at around $80,000 per borehole. $80,000 per borehole. But in the same location, another NGO was drilling the same boreholes at $12,000. So the difference of almost $68,000, almost 7 times more. So why are government wells that are dug by the military, but that are dug by the local Ministry of Water, 7 times higher than local NGOs that are funded by donors. So again, these are corrupt techniques of stealing away money. A classroom that would otherwise cost $10,000 to build costs the government $45,000 to build. Corruption. Markups on actual cost so that this money can be able to go to corrupt government officials. So you find that a road that should cost this amount of money costs the taxpayer more than 10 times the construction of this actual road, for example. So the locals get much less value, the taxpayer pays much more costs, and very few or very little is actually achieved. Corruption and mismanagement of funds on a grand scale is what makes most governments broke, because if it is loans that you took to pay for these things, you'll still pay for these things, but because your actual investment is a lot lower than it should be, then your return from this investment is a lot less for those that you are paying a lot more for money that is pocketed by mismanaged by officers who have done or concocted corrupt dealings and mismanagement and theft of funds. So that is the biggest cost of corruption, that what is invested on the ground is much lower. What is paid for from these investments is a lot higher, but the return on these small investments is much lower to justify these big costs. The cost of corruption is one thing that is affecting most governments and most citizens of any country. Of course, the other thing is loss on exchange rates. When your local currency falls significantly lower than international traded currencies like the dollar, the euro, and any other internationally traded currency, then it means that if you took foreign loans in, say, dollars, but your currency has gone down in value, it means that you pay a lot more in your local currency for this foreign debt, not because you have incurred more, not because the interest rate is higher, but because the exchange rate has gone bad. So when governments take foreign loans in foreign denominations and their currency goes down, they end up paying a lot more, and the more you pay, the less is going towards meeting your recurrent expenditures. So foreign exchange is one of the biggest problems. Of course, the cure for that is to borrow locally, even though borrowing locally also has its limits, because if you borrow too much locally, it means that the interest rates that are offered to normal individuals will go up. So the interest rates that are offered by institutions to locals to be able to open businesses will go up because you have borrowed too much, and the available funds that will go towards investing in local businesses will be much lower, because a lot of the money will go towards government and bills and bonds, and that also has a negative impact. So reduce significantly the amount of foreign debt and try as much as possible to balance the amount you request on the local market. Of course, the other one is loss of tax on foreign controlled local entities. So when local institutions are controlled by foreign companies, majority that are owned locally but through dubious secretive dealings, they end up restricting the amount of money that can be taxed, because remember, most governments, to encourage foreign direct investments, have certain tax incentives for the foreigners who invest locally. So because some countries have a significant number of foreign investors in the local market, they end up collecting a lot less in terms of corporate taxes. So because of this, many institutions are actually able to avoid tax, and this avoided tax is less money to the government to be able to meet its recurrent government expenditures, and actual expenses. Of course, the other thing is transfer pricing. Yes, transfer pricing, again through the same foreign institutions. So one of the easiest way, of course, to be able to do it, if you're still taxed as a foreign institution locally, a certain amount of tax, of course this tax is on the net profit that you generate. So to be able to creatively, through accounting, be able to reduce the amount of tax liability, then you could be able to say, for example, that you need a foreign component or element or item that is used by local production and price that element a lot higher, so that your margins locally reported to the local tax authority are a lot less. And because they are a lot less, the amount of tax that you collect is a lot less. Again, creative accounting, because again, who looks at this amount that is charged by this foreign entity to the local entity? Sometimes it is just determined by people, and they might just do it to avoid tax that they would pay to help this local government meet its recurrent government expenditures. Transfer pricing. The other thing is, of course, high loans and debts. If you have high loans, then you have high payments towards loans, because remember, most governments actually have the policy of paying off loans and debts before their actual expenditure, which is a good practice. You pay off your debt first before you can spend on your recurrent expenses. But when these debts are too high, either because they are foreign debts and the local currency has gone down, or they are big debts because the items have been that have been invested in have been ballooned to be able to pay a lot more for a lot less. This high debt balloons into less money that is actually available to be able to meet the current expenditures and the needs for investment. And this sometimes affects the local people, because they are again have to be taxed a lot more so that the government can be able to meet its recurrent expenditure. Of course, the other thing is investments in terrible investments. So when a government invests in an item that is more for show, that is more for political bravado than its viable feasibly viable economic realities on the ground, then becomes problematic. When you build a big exquisite highway from one part of the country to the next part of the country, you may not be able to actually get enough in terms of return in investment in a foreseeable future. And if it is a road from nowhere to nowhere, then you might not even be able to feel the impact economically of the reduced cost of transportation. So when projects are picked because of their flamboyance rather than their practical economic benefit to a country, then it leaves most of the time it brings less income from investment than its actual cost. And this again doubles and compounds the effect of there is nothing that will come out from this investment, and so there is much less that can come to be able to pay for the loans from investing in these investments. Is like when you take your personal cash and invest in a big personal house that you may not be able to derive real value, additional value from having this luxurious house than just having a normal house. You have this big house, but the return on investment may not be commensurate. Is it like that? A flamboyant project, but the returns are negligible. So when governments engage in this, then it becomes questionable and becomes difficult for their financial well-being. Do you have any other reasons why governments go broke? Please leave them in the comment section. Remember to subscribe to the channel, because here I talk about all things finance. Thank you and enjoy your